Chris Rock said that only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. A man is only loved under the condition that he provides something. Only women and children and dogs are loved unconditionally. A man is only loved under the condition that he provides something. Chris Rock. He goes further later into his routine. He actually gives a really good example of this. He says, like, when a guy meets a girl and they get together with their friends, the guy tells his friends, and what does the friends ask? What does she look like? When the girl gets together with her friends and she tells them about this new guy that she met, what do the friends say? What does he do? Right? What is he going to do to facilitate the dream that she has and that he could make sure that all her dreams could come true? And so there's some truth to what Chris Rock is saying and observing about the world, that men are tied to production, men are tied to provision, but men are also tied to protecting. And men in general, overall, and I thought maybe it was just me at certain times in my life, but I've realized that overall we wrestle with the association of being loved based on the value of our work. The idea that it's been demonstrated to us in the world that our work has worth, but it's also the highest value of being loved. And so if you're struggling with that today, if you, as a man, you feel like you're never going to experience unconditional love, I just want to first tell you that through Jesus Christ that we can actually experience unconditional love, that our Father in heaven has for us, and it's through Christ that you can have that. But it's true that God created us with the intention to work. I'm not going to lie. God has placed us. God has placed us here to work. It's actually straight out of the creation story. See, God created all of creation. When He created it, what did He call it? Do you guys remember? It was good. That's right. And then in Genesis 2:15, it says that God took man and He placed him in the garden specifically to work. And that's a gift. I know that some of us, we're tired of working sometimes, but honestly, guys, it's a gift. It's a blessing that God has given us. It gives us purpose, gives us work, it feeds our soul, because we're wired to work. However, you'll note that in Genesis, it's only after this with God, who affirmed that all things were good, that He said, it's not good for man to be alone. So, while man had work, man was not complete. And man was not fully defined by work. And so God gave Adam, and He really gives men two different things that happen in Genesis 2. The first thing is that God gives Adam work to do with God together. That's why they name all the animals together and they rule over them. They spend that time together. But then the second thing that God gives him is a helper. And He gives Adam Eve, thus giving understanding to man about the relationship he has with God through a relationship with someone that is equal to him. So God never intended for His love for us to be rooted in what we provide for Him. In fact, if I can correct Chris Rock, man is loved under the condition that God provides something, not man. When you think about it, who provided the woman? God. Man can't say, all I need is my best friend, my dog. Just him and me. But God provided the animals too. So it's God who provides. And not only does God provide us life, provide purpose, provide blessing, but then while we were still sinners, God provided sacrificial love through His Son, thus providing us salvation, providing us deliverance from our transgressions, from our shortcomings, and then He provides us everlasting freedom. So God provided us the means to experience the unconditional love that God has for us. So it doesn't surprise me that the world has turned that upside down and rooted itself back into a merit system. Guys, we use our marriages as a way to earn points with each other. The way that we raise our kids to say you won't mount to a hill of beans unless you work. And in our brokenness, I don't think we can get past that. However, men, let me tell you, if you feel like you're finding trouble finding unconditional love in the world, I think that only testifies and proves to the fact that it's only something that God can actually provide us. So we have to stop searching for it everywhere else in the world. However, that doesn't mean that gets us out of work, that we don't have to work. Like we're still created to work. Toil's a blessing. It really is. And it's something that we get to do with God, but also we get to do for other people. We get to provide for others. And this emulates how God provides for us. The word emulate is the entire premise, by the way, behind being a father. And you'll take note of that theme. But I feel like there's this mantra that's recirculating. Actually, it's resurfacing, because I know I'm not that old, but I know this thing's been around longer than us. You don't have to work until you have to. So all of a sudden, this is what we're telling ourselves. You don't have to put anything in until they absolutely have to. Why put in extra work? Why do anything more? Why do we postpone work? Why do we do that? Especially working on ourselves. Why would we postpone anything like that? But working towards something does not equate that you have earned it. That's not what work is about, is working towards earning something. Although money sure seems to tell us that's what it's for. But working towards something is about being prepared for it. Preparing ourselves for what would to arrive. And this is especially true of fatherhood. So the qualities that your children and your wife need are qualities that should be cultivated over time. They're not solved in the moment. And there's a difference between being reactive and being responsive. Reactive means we just fall back on our natural tendencies. We're just reacting to the situation. We're allowing the state and the intensity of the moment to dictate how we will react rather than us leading through it. And fathers, that's our goal. Our goal is to lead others through things. So don't count yourself at having a very relationship with responsibility and leadership if you've never produced the qualities of patience, virtue, discipline, if they haven't been there before. They're not going to just suddenly arrive in the moment. To be responsive to a situation is to lead with direction, to know where we're going. So we're called to guide those that have been entrusted to us. We're supposed to guide them and direct them towards a place. And I believe we're supposed to direct them towards God. But this doesn't mean you have to have everything figured out. I learned that. I don't know if you're still thinking like, oh man, I wish I had it all put together. It doesn't mean you have to have everything figured out. That's not true. And in fact, that's impossible. Dads, it's impossible to know exactly what to do in every situation. However, what we can determine is what we're going to lean on. We can determine who we're going to fall back on. Rather than falling back on our tendencies, we can turn to God, and thus we're guiding others to do the exact same thing. The hope is that we've cultivated a character and a lifestyle of living out the principles of godly fatherhood before the situation arises. I recently became a dad, again. We just had our third child, Hezekiah, and it's been 8 years in between. Don't clap, don't clap. It's not that special. I mean, kids are special. Hang on. I forgot in 8 years' time. I forgot most of it. I was like, I don't remember this part. What about this? What about that? And so you'd think you'd go through an experience, and then you'd hold on to all those things. You'd be like, I know how to do it now. I did it once before. I can do it again. But if you're not cultivating those things, they'll all just disappear. And so Hezekiah's birth was very intense, very quick, very fast. We had Hezekiah very quickly. And it was an intense moment. And we got into the room, and there were doctors, nurses, and I felt like a fish out of water because I was the only man in the room. And I also did not know what my job was. And as a man, that's very important to you to know, what is my job in this situation? Just tell me what I'm supposed to do. But I realized that's what I was saying to myself. But my wife would tell me, she'd tell me today, I hope still today actually, that she'd tell me, I don't know how I would have done it without you. And when I hear that, I go, that's amazing. What'd I do? But the truth is just holding her hand, being of encouragement to her, was exactly what she needed for the moment. And when I think back and realize I didn't do those things because I said, this is the best tactic to handle this situation. It's just something that came natural because it's been cultivated. When Hezekiah was born, the moment he was born, when he came out, he had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck 3 times. And Michelle could not see any of this. I could. And Hezekiah wasn't screaming. There was no noise, no nothing. And in that moment, I realized I had this urge to basically say, oh my gosh, do something, right? But I realized quickly that is not my responsibility right now. My responsibility is to be a rock for my wife. She couldn't see what was happening. And if I had just screamed out in panic, it would have caused her to panic. What's happening? What's going on? And she's in all this pain, realizing that she's just gone through something huge. And I realized I need to be preparing myself. I need to prepare myself to be there for her. Because I don't know what's going to come after this moment, and I'm going to have to trust the doctors in that moment. And so, sure enough, the doctors, like that, it was done. There was screaming. There was joy. Hezekiah's in Michelle's arms. All things are good. The doctor comes to me later and says to me, it happens all the time. Happens all the time, she says. Part of me is like, I don't know, this is 1 out of 3. I never experienced this before. But I realize I probably would have looked really foolish, would I have not? I look really foolish, screaming, saying, do something, it's the end of the world. And they say, no, it happens all the time, 1 out of 3. If we allow ourselves to react in a way that we raise our children, the way that we lead our families, men, where would we be guiding them? Would we not be guiding them to be reactive themselves? Would we not be teaching them to be victims of life rather than sojourns? Would we be teaching them the easy path, the way just coast? That's what I do. Rather than helping them see that the strength that they need is in God to uphold the responsibility that they have for their life. Would we not be teaching them to be unintentional with life rather than purposeful? Out of that, there are 3 qualities we want to instill in our children. Let me give those to you guys today. Dads, we're called to give our children these qualities. First is responsibility. To do is what we say. To have accountability, to have integrity. Right? To take on the things that God gives us in life, but to take them on with joy. We're also called to give our kids intentionality, to teach them intentionality. Not to be wanderers, but have purpose and have meaning, to know their purpose and meaning and know that it's in God. To have them take careful thought through the things that they do and to be diligent in work. And all this, it produces direction for their life, right? And that direction is towards God's way. The third thing we need to instill in our kids is humility. We have to teach them to be humble when they fall short. The way that they respect other people in life. And this would teach them to be repentive when they mess up and to be forgiving to others when others mess up. But you notice the interesting thing about those 3 things. Notice that all of those traits are not things that are best explained but demonstrated. Because our kids are never going to learn those things if we just teach it to them with words. Those things are caught. That we have to do those things ourselves. Doesn't that mean that we have to be these things already? We can't just in the moment decide, I think I'm going to take on responsibility in this. We need to emulate them. We need to look to Christ to produce them in us. Now, this doesn't mean we'll always respond correctly. I know that if you're thinking I'm telling you, and you're like, I just messed up last week. Yeah, I get it. Me too. Even with the best intentions, we will sometimes react with our emotions to situations or coast through them, more focused on our agenda and the things that we want, our entertainment. And there's grace for those shortcomings. I want you to know that. There's grace when we recognize them as such. And we'll not always get it right, but at least when we identify them as moments when we're being reactive rather than responsive, we can suddenly realize now is the time to repent. Now's the time to allow Christ to continue to mold us in His image. The good news is for you, there's training on the job. Great news for dads. There's always training on the job, and that's the way we should treat everything. All work is always training. We're never professionals. And this is what it means when Paul tells us to mature in Christ. A good example of what Paul says is in 1 Corinthians 13:11 when he says, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. And when I became," the word became, to emerge, to grow into, right? Is also immediate, but also there's this progressive growth of when I became a man, I gave up my childish ways. The passage continues that we then ought to emulate, that we're looking in a mirror and it's dimly, we're seeing it, it's like puzzle pieces of Christ, and we're learning each new piece of Christ, and as we take it on until we come to face with Him and we will fully see Him. But until that point, we mature in what we discover about Christ. Maturity builds off other small steps of maturity. Now, I know that some of you aren't dads in the room. I understand. I know that, but this is information that's important as a church, that we know all of this. And if you're thinking about being a dad, or you're young enough to, that's in your near future, you got to stop saying, when I have a kid, then I'll change. When I have a kid, then I'll figure it all out. Do not wait. I urge you, do not wait. Start today. And don't be reactive to what I'm saying right now, by the way, like, oh man, everything Rick's saying is so good. Oh man, so good. And you're responding, what you're doing is responding and reacting, and you're just like, I'm going to make a quick change today. Don't do that. Be responsive. Because the responsive thing to do is to recognize, what do I need to work on? Let me set long-term goals. Let me turn to Christ now and see what He says. Let the transformation happen by Christ, not by ourselves. And can I pray that over the dads in the room today? Can I do that? Thank you.